on to our payroll setups. And first one here is how to use the payroll, what the periods are, and what some defaults are. So we basically have three options that we can identify how we're going to use our payroll system here. The first one is not used. We're not using payroll at all. Nothing out of it. The second option is we're going to do our time cards there, and we're in a job cost, but where some other system is actually going to issue payroll checks and W-2s and all that wonderful stuff. And then the last one is we're actually going to issue payroll checks in our system. Then the next item here is payroll period. What do you pay weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, monthly, daily, hourly, whatever your payroll period is. And if you're semi-monthly, you need to establish what day, the 2 days of the month that you normally would be doing your pay dates on the 10th and the 25th or something to that effect. A lot of this stuff I think everyone knows, but in the payroll you also have to have a unique payroll contact code, and in most companies that's contact code number 2, which will be the vendor, if you want to call it that, for the payroll. As some of you may know, our payroll module kind of acts as its own little separate little company out there, is how we envision payroll, where it's your own ADP, let's say, but ADP that knows everything about your company, your organization, and your projects, and your task codes, and all that type of stuff. So payroll actually bills when it charges to jobs. So you have this little payroll thing going on, and then it goes and charges your period payroll to MAA. And that's where the transfer of money that goes into your payroll account and all that type of stuff. We also have a default job number for payroll items, so anything that's automated done will go and put it to that job number. Sometimes when we have no source transfers, just an in and out on your trial balance, it needs to know, okay, what job number do I use for that? The default contact type, I think that's fixed. Yeah, that's fixed. Oh, maybe I don't have it fixed. But that will always be employee. There are some exceptions to that we've had, but it's usually just when you don't really have any true employees. They're really subcontractors type thing. We can play around with that, but for the most part, you always want to just leave that as employee as the default player type. We also have a list of employee classes, for example, in management and labor, but you can make this up however you would like it to be. At some points, this will actually help you distinguish who can see what. In some companies, we may have payroll is done maybe by one person for all the labor, and then another person does the management side of it. So this will help you group your payroll together so that you can keep payroll information even more secure with the people that are actually doing payroll. The other thing is that we have payroll units. These are units of measure just for the payroll area. So the estimating area had the units of measure that was used across everything. But here, this is your units of measure. So it might be HR would be hourly. You might have SR for, this is just a salary type thing. Squared would be, like roofing contractors. They get paid by the square piecework. Same thing with lineal foot. Someone's getting paid by piecework. If you actually have that, then you may want to put those payroll units for that. The next tab here, one of the questions that popped up here is for payroll, is there any real-time way to check, say, direct labor on all jobs worked on yesterday, both dollar and man hours, and how that compares to the budget set up for the job? And can the budget be set up for both dollar and man hours? So currently, we don't have a report in MAA that says, okay, here's a job cost report, but here's also the money and hours that is in payroll that hasn't gotten charged to jobs yet. And we haven't had a big need for that because most payroll doesn't get inputted until the end of the period, and then it's usually job costed within a couple days anyways. So it was kind of a small window. So we never pursued that type of reporting. With that said, though, now that we have a iOS interface, meaning an iPhone and an iPad, and one of the things on both of those is people to record their time. So we do have a means to record real time into the system. So that's really easy to get the man hours. The dollar value is a little bit more complicated based on how these payroll setups are made and how you want to do this. For a person's pay rate, there's two ways that how it gets job costed. One is in the pay rate, you just simply say, okay, here's the hourly rate. He gets, $20 an hour. But the burden rate, what I want to charge the jobs, is you can hard code that and say this is $30 an hour or $40 an hour is what I want to burden charge to the jobs. And there's a field in payroll, and it's in the old system as well, that you put in what that burden rate is. So now what happens is when you charge the jobs, it's going to take your hours times that burden rate, and that's what it's going to charge to the jobs. However, if you leave that blank, what's going to get charged to the job is your actual cost of payroll, in which you don't know what all that burden is until you actually process your payroll. So you take your time cards and you process those time cards to produce payroll checks. In that process, it goes and looks at all your benefit deductions, maybe your health insurance, your 401k items. It's going to look at all the actual costs. You're going to look at your workers' comp types things, and it's going to build what that burden rate is for that job for that week. And that is what it's going to be sent to MAA, to job costing. So to answer your question, could you have what someone dollar-wise and time-wise for what they did yesterday? If you were tracking the time daily and you had your employee pay rates filled in with what the burden rate should be, then the answer is yes. We could show you over in payroll, what it is and actually pull that into a job cost report. However, and that's for dollar and time. However, if you don't record your time daily and well, then it's kind of obvious, but if you record your time daily, but you process the payroll to figure out what your actual overhead is, you won't be able to see the total dollar value, but you would be able to see the man hours. And can a budget be set up both dollar and man hours? Absolutely. And we actually can do that now. So when you job cost, you can send your hours and your burden rate over per hour over to, and when you have your budget based on hours. And so we have reports that look at quantity reports that will look at hours budgeted less hours actually worked and give you variance of how many hours are left for it. Okay, that was a long explanation for that. Okay, this tab, burdens and variables. These are your kind of like fixed percentages. And a lot of our clients will actually use this a little bit differently. But under company-wide burdens on payroll, we basically have three. For example, a cost to payroll. Maybe you go, okay, well, I'm going to increase our payroll cost by 10%. I'm just going to arbitrarily put 10% on cost of all our payroll because that's how much it costs us to actually do our own payroll. Then we can have percentages here for vacation, sick and leave, and other. Most of the time, this is actually set up as a benefit deduction type thing because you have a little bit more control of it. But if you wanted to lump everything together into one percentage, you could. And then same thing with your liability insurance. A lot of companies will have their liability insurance based on their payroll, and this is where you can put that in there. And if you're a union, back to that setup, if you checked, okay, I'm a union contractor, then you will probably have these items, which will be like employee dues or employers' contributions that you have to do based on your benefit units factor type thing. And we also want to tell, and I think with this we have this in the other setups and estimating as well, is how many hours are in your working shift. How many hours are in a shift? So for calculation purposes. All right, the next item here is workers' comp. So this would be all your workers' comps codes, your working comp codes, your descriptions, the wage range for it, and then the payroll base, that's percentage or each $100 type thing. And then this is what will actually get used based upon your modifier. So your company will have a modifier that will take all your base codes and will automatically modify them. And this isn't, obviously this isn't correct, because this actually should be reversed, but a lot of your codes will be, so if someone makes is between $8 and $20 an hour, he gets one rate. And if someone's from $20 to $30 an hour or $30 to $99 an hour, he gets another rate. So this is where you set up those pay rate ranges for it. And I think we can drill down. Yeah, that's just for you to recalc and run some reports here if you want. So that's your workers' comp. If you have multi-companies, you can then select, if you set this up for one company, you then can copy it over to another company for it. The last tab is if you actually are using an outside payroll service. Right now we only have ADP that we've done a little export, text export out of payroll that then is sent to them, and then they actually do an import to do their job. So you would say, okay, well, I'm ADP, and here's my contact code for ADP. That will pull all the information that we need in order to send it. Or you'd mark none. If you leave it blank, it's going to assume it's none. And this basically how we got this one is the client said, hey, we use ADP. Can you do, but we do all the job costing. We don't want to have to re-enter the data every time. Can you do a report with ADP to do that? And we said sure, and we did that. So if you have, and ADP has several different methods of doing that, but this is where eventually as more people, there's Paychex, there's a couple others, there's even Quicken that we have made contact with to support our import into Quicken's online software. Right now they don't support an import yet, but as soon as they do, we'll know about it, and we'll be doing a connection there as well. And then the last item here is post payroll to the trial balance. That's yes, we do want to do that. That could be no if you're doing everything job costing wise. So if you're sending everything to MAA with the burden separated out and stuff, and that's really all the GL posting you really need, then no, you may not have to post payroll. But if you want all the details, all the taxes and everything broken out on your trial balance, then yes, you do need to post payroll. When posting expense detail burdens, again, if you leave that yes, it's going to take all your burdens that are expensed, and it's going to post all your burden detail. If you say no, it's just going to, that expense is going to be lump summed in your normal posting of your payroll checks. Activate PR trans, that will probably be going away now that we have our own IS device, but this allows us to actually interface with the old Nextel phones for payroll time card gathering out in the field. So we just have that in there for backwards compatible with other clients. Should payroll that has been charged to jobs get posted to the trial balance? So again, that depends on how you've set these things up, but a lot of times the answer will be yes, because that's going to be a payable that goes to the system that then pays your payroll checks. But sometimes when you charge to jobs, you're actually charging the checks to MAA, so therefore that would be no. So it depends on how you're going to charge payroll. And then auto payoff charge payroll relieving AP with the payroll clearing account. So when you charge to jobs, if you're going to transfer 100% of that money back to the payroll account, then you probably want to make that yes. Otherwise, you probably want to leave it no for it. And then when you're charging payroll to MAA, do you want to just use lump sum dollar values, one lump thing, or you want to bring over the quantity and rates? And kind of back to the question, with the budget hours and the comparing hours, you would want to make sure you do the quantity and rate for it. And then the next to the last couple items here is auto reduce projected labor costs. So if you have a projected labor cost and you charge to jobs and you're putting labor to that same cost code on that same job, it will go, and if you had 100 hours there projected and you just charged 8 hours to it, it will then reduce that 100 hours down to the 92 hours for it. So the last two things here are always defaulted to no, and the defaults when you click this, what kind of happens is when you set this up and you click this, the defaults may switch on you based on how you've set this up and how you've set up your GL codes. The company clicking on defaults will set this the way CMIS believes it should work. So you really don't want to change this unless you're probably on support with us to actually tell you what's going to happen, or in this test, when you're in the test environment, you want to experiment with payroll, you may want to play around with these settings and then run payroll and try to do that and see what the effects are. But generally, you just want to, once you have everything set up, your GL codes, all your setups here, you want to click the defaults button to see what actually plays out there. Here is auto calculation of overtime. So most people will actually set that as no. In some areas, it's like here in California, the overtime, if you're normal, you have a 8-hour days. If you work 9 hours one day, that 1 hour is overtime, even though the next day you may only work 7. Some states are, overtime doesn't come into play until you work more than 40 hours during the week. So if you work lots of hours on one day and don't work the next, then, but as long as it's not over 40 hours. So there's different combinations, but this is the auto calc, meaning that when you enter that time for that payroll, it will automatically start assuming, okay, you've put in more than 40 hours, so therefore I'm going to plug in overtime on what are the last, actually right now it just goes, what are the last job entry. So in most cases you actually want to leave that no, unless your known business process is you want to just automatically automate that. And then your standard time input, standard is you have hours, minutes, seconds. You can do military time, so 1800 and so forth. And then the decimal 12.5 is 1230 type thing.